Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons episode. Today, we're going to be discussing those fixtures that have just been released. And shock, we've got a difficult start. Sloth, nice to have you. We expected by our start, which is going to be against Man City, as it normally always is.
Yeah, I was pretty much expecting one of the big teams to kick off the season, to be honest. It always either seems to be a top team or Newcastle. There's no in between, weirdly. But yeah, I think I think it's an interesting one because we'll obviously get to see Haaland for the first time, and hopefully a bit of a new look squad. But yeah, it was never going to be easy, was it? It was never. There's no games these days apart from Norwich, but they're not even in the league anymore. So it's
Well, do you think having, there's always big hype when fixtures come out, but do you actually pay much attention to it? Do you think that having Man City in our first game could actually be an advantage to us, having to play them so early?
I think it's definitely a good one to get out of the way. You don't want to be, because I think I saw a brief snippet of them, and I think I had a chat with a colleague at work about a couple of the fixtures, and I think we've got Forest's second game away.
Yes.
And I think you're much better off getting a big team out of the way first and then having that buffer. But what you don't want is to have City at the kind of fourth or fifth game of the season where you think you found your feet, and then if you get tonked 5 or 6-0, you just, you're back to almost square one with it. So I think what's going to be really, really interesting is to see how we play, first of all, against City, but how we handle the next game after. Because if we lose 4 or 5-0, or if we get something from it, we need to show character either way, because it's a tough ask at the start of the season.
I mean, I think it was 3 seasons ago now. We had them first at home as well, and that was the season which we signed Haller, and in pre-season we were looking pretty good. And I think we ended up losing that game like 5-0. And in the first half, we were only 1 down, and we were playing some pretty good football, and Haller was just on fire. And then second half, we just plummeted. So do you think, this first game, having Man City, it's almost a free license for these new signings, because after that game, we lost 5-0 to Man City, but Haller played all right for, 60 minutes. And we were like, oh, let's take this positive from it. And, we've got Man City out of the way, like you were mentioning before.
I think that's the way you have to kind of look at it, because if Aguerd comes in, hopefully, and looks shaky on the ground against City, against Haaland, you can't really you can't judge him off that, because every centre back in the world could potentially have an off day, and if it's against Haaland, they're going to ship 3 or 4 goals, or maybe 1 or 2. But the thing is that while you want to see the attitude of players, and I think if we do go 3 down early doors, you want to see someone with a bit about them who's trying to get the rest of the team rallied. And even if we do take a bit of a beating, then you can say, yeah, that they went out, they gave 100%. And I think that should really be what any football fan in general can ask for. Because if a team has a great day and you end up getting trounced, you just have to hold your hands up sometimes and say, yeah, fair play.
Yeah, I mean, after that City game anyway, we have Forest away, so their first home game is going to be us. Pretty shocking. And then we have Brighton at home, where it's Brighton. Another game we notoriously don't win, and then we've got Villa away, which we've done well the past few seasons. So that first 4 games, I remember a couple of seasons ago now as well. I think it might have been under Pellegrini, where we lost our first 4 games of the season, and it was kind of panic setting in before we went to Everton and won like 3-1. So is there danger that, you know, having Man City, having Brighton, a team, again, we don't notoriously beat, having those kind of games to start off the season isn't actually a good thing? And, you know, maybe it's better having those easier fixtures on paper to kind of get your season started and get the confidence flowing.
I'll be honest with you. I've long had this kind of belief that the first 5 or 6 games of a season are almost totally irrelevant. They're not meaningless, but you know, if you go out and you lose the first 6 games, well, yeah, that is a, quite frankly, shocking start. But you've got so much time to turn it around. It's for me, when I look at a fixture list, I always look at the kind of back end. I always look at the final third of a season, because that's where the games are going to matter. And I know we did our recap previously and we said what if, and these kind of early games are where you go, well, we could have picked up more points there, or we could have done this. But when you're betting in signings, those first few games are important, but you kind of have to have a realistic outlook. And you know, how badly did Spurs start under? They started really well, Nuno, and then they had that really flat period. But you know, I'd rather get a bad period out the way first and then continue good form than start like nobody's business and you know, potentially take 9 points from 12 and then hit the brakes and really struggle. Because I think it's the first. Me and my dad have always said that really the league table is irrelevant until about 6 games in, because it can look totally different. And you know, we were top at one point in the first 3 games or something, was it? And you think
after that Leicester game,
you think, well, that's nice, but again, it's meaningless. So I do think getting off to a good start it's nice, but again, the start of the season is never gonna really matter too much unless you're pushing for that title. Like that's where the points matter. If you can put together a great escape like we've seen ourselves and many other teams do, then you're going to do that at the back end of the season.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I will say is we have to play those qualifiers for Europe. So I think that's going to be in August. So we could actually end up having a pretty tight schedule. I know at the very end of August, we have Spurs at home as our last game of the month. And, you know, if we have to play, 1 or 2 more European matches in between in August, we're going to end up having, 7 games in August to start the season. And then obviously we've got the World Cup break. So there's going to be a lot of football next season. If we do, you know, have the ambition of, you know, matching our European run of last season, even better in the Conference League. So having, you know, such a big start with some pretty tough fixtures could actually have that reverse impact. And, you know, you say it doesn't really matter after, you know, the first 6 games are pretty irrelevant, but we could find ourselves in a situation where we want to make sure we qualify in Europe. So we're kind of 50-50 in the league again, even to start off with. And then we end up, you know, in that bottom 3, bottom 5 come the end of August. And then, you know, we start September with actually a trip to Chelsea. Yeah. And again, a place we don't notoriously win. And my concern is that Man City game is actually pretty big in terms of the statement, because if we just roll over, we then go into those European qualifiers, you know, with a bit of pressure on us. You know, if we get rolled over as our first game in the league, the fans are going to be a bit more on edge in terms of demanding that European success straight away and qualifying for those group stages. Because, like I said, we're going to end up playing 7 games in August, and that is going to potentially put a strain on us before we've even started.
I think, yeah, I'll kind of go back to my point about City, is that like it's almost a throwaway in my opinion, because as much as I'd like to get a point from it, I'm already thinking, well, you know, Man City can go out. They've already got 2 great players joining, who are absolutely rapid. One of them's massive, and you know, they score goals, they create goals. I think the key is going to be getting players in, getting them settled quickly, getting a full pre-season under their belt. I think that's the key, is getting the fitness in. But I think for me the result against City is almost meaningless, because it would be amazing if we win it, but as long as we've got the fitness, as long as we are winning those qualifiers, and then I kind of think, well, you can't, you unless you are a Madrid or you are a Munich, you can't go to a team like City and expect to get something. So I think the Forest game is more the sort of one that I think is going to be the more telling game, because we want to make sure we're putting out a statement, but I think if we can do that in the European games and then potentially pick up a point against City, going into that game against Forest, you're automatically thinking, well, this is a decent foundation to build on. But if you get tonked by City, you still got to look at that Forest game and go, we need to get something from this, or even worst case, let's go out, make sure that we play our game, and if we do, we get something, hopefully 3 points, but if not, it's a point to steady the league ship almost.
I mean, we got, I think, you know, in between that August period and then up until Christmas, obviously we only have 2 games in November. Before that, in October, we do play Liverpool and Man U away, which will be pretty interesting. I think we played them both in space of like 10 days. So again, that's another 2 pretty tough fixtures out of the way before that World Cup as well. And then when we come back, we have that Boxing Day fixture, which is actually away to Arsenal. So that's going to be our first game back after the World Cup. Make of that what you will. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. So what do you think? Because we'll have a few players at that World Cup, and we'll have a few players that will have ambitions of going quite far. You know, Rice and Bowen with England. Obviously, it's not looking great, but they'll be hoping to go far in the tournament. And we do have a few players that will be featuring, and I'm sure Arsenal have the same. But do you think having playing a tough fixture like Arsenal on that first game back is actually a good thing or a bad thing?
I think, I mean, ideally you'd want to be playing one of the lower down teams. The issue with the Arsenal game is, at the moment, unless they're really going to go out, unless they're going to sign someone like Jesus, and they get a few of the signings that I've seen them, you know, pushing for on board, then I think they're probably going to be in the same place they are this year, or they were this year, where they're going to be looking to kind of break top 4 if they can, and if not, then, you know, it's realistically, they're not going to be challenging for the title. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way, but their squad has not got a patch of the quality that City has. It's not got the patch of the quality that potentially Chelsea could have next year. and they also don't have the same spending power that those teams do. Am I worried about Arsenal? There's never a good time to play them, but I think if we get the good additions in, and again, this is why I think that the transfer window is so important. If England have a good tournament and we go far, then potentially Rice isn't going to feature in that game. So, or even if he picks up a knock, there's a big chance that could happen.
Yeah.
Then he doesn't feature in that game. So we need someone who is ready to come in, ready to feature, and ready to perform. So it's all well and good people saying, we don't need more than one centre mid to come in. We definitely do. Like we do, because if Souček goes out and gets injured, again, Rice could be going to the World Cup and we could have our two starting centre mids out. And against Arsenal, who are undoubtedly going to have, either Lokonga, potentially Partey. And let's face it, Arsenal always have good young players in the squad. Then we want to be taking a strong side there. So I don't think there's a good time to play Arsenal, but I'm not. If we have a strong window, I'm not that bothered, because I think we should be looking the way this club is going. We should be looking to take things from those games. So
we'll I mean, it's a pretty similar situation, isn't it? Because we both have European football. We both have relatively small squads in comparison to the rest of the league. So it's going to be, like you said, a really important transfer window for us this summer. So, yeah, I think if you pretty much summarised it well, I don't think there's ever a good time to go to Arsenal away, especially with our record again. And it's going to be tough, especially tough after that World Cup. But if they've got a few players, it's going to be the same. So it could make it more balanced coming back in that first game. It's almost like a mini break for some of the players, and we'll be a bit more fresh. So it could actually work in our favour having the World Cup, because I don't know how many players we're actually going to have there, but having that kind of month break for some of the players that we don't notoriously get in the Premier League, where, compared like Bundesliga, where we'll get that Christmas break, we could see ourselves going into the second half of the season where we've tended to burn out a bit more, especially this season we saw with Europe, actually could help us if we're still in those competitions, because the likes of Souček, who just run himself into the ground, and you could probably say it for the whole of our squad, Fornals, Antonio, all these players will probably get rests in that period. So we then go into January at Leeds away with our first game of the 2023 with a relatively fresh squad. And, that World Cup, people have said, it's kind of interrupting the season, but could play in our advantage, could play to our hands.
I don't know. I personally, I think there's never a good disruption to have. And I personally, I'm going to keep this bit brief, because my opinions on the World Cup are that it's a complete and utter shambles. Everything from the top to the bottom of it, the planning. I'm even hearing today that the Southgate put in a request for the top 6 teams to not play each other, like 2 weeks before the World Cup, or before the squad travel. I think that's an absolute joke. I think it's pretty disgraceful, because surely if it's all about a game of football, then what does it matter? What does it matter who plays who? So I don't really think there's any way that a disruption is going to benefit people. People said the lockdown benefited us and having that disruption. And while you can argue hypotheticals over that, I think we saw the impact of fans back at the stadium to counteract it. And I think if it can work both ways. If we have a really bad start to the season and have a break and come back, maybe Rice has had a great World Cup, then they can come back and lift everything. And, you know, vice versa. If players go away and have a terrible tournament, then who knows what's going to happen? It's one of those things where I'll wait and see. But for me, I think the whole planning of it has been an absolute joke, and something that, to be honest, I just want to get it over and done with. This is the first World Cup I've not been excited for.
Yeah.
And that really kind of is tough for me to say, because I've been to quite a lot of England games. Like I've probably been to at least 40 or 50. I've done a couple of away trips. But I genuinely don't really find myself thinking, oh, I'm going to watch all the World Cup games. And I just think that it's an unwelcome disruption to the season. And for West Ham, it could be one that really hits us hard.
I think what you said, before was pretty spot on. I didn't actually think of it that way. It's not just the physical impacts of having, that World Cup in between. It's the psychological as well. Because if you're a player that, your country's had a really bad World Cup, and you're one person that really represents the country and plays with pride, that's going to hurt. You can't just switch straight back to the Premier League, because it doesn't work like that. They're humans. It's going to take a bit of time, and especially maybe even if an England or someone like that get close to winning it and then go out in harsh circumstances. How easy is it then to switch out of World Cup mode straight back into league mode? That's the biggest question mark around it. And I completely agree. I don't think having a World Cup like this is fair. But I guess we're going to see how it pans out this season. But yeah, and then we go into that second half of the season. We have some pretty big games. We have Chelsea at home in February. We have Man City away in March. And then at the end of April, we have Liverpool at home. So pretty close to the end of the season. And then I think we have Man U at home in May. So the last month. And then our final game of the season is actually Leicester away. Don't know what your thoughts on that are, where your kind of thoughts are on Leicester as a whole at the moment, and where you kind of see them being next season in regards to the league table and our competition, really.
My thoughts on Leicester are, they might not be popular, but I think Brendan Rodgers is probably the most overrated manager in the league.
Really?
Most overrated manager in the league is probably a bit harsh, because I think depending on the next couple of seasons, you could make some other good arguments for that. If Arsenal don't qualify for Champions League, if various other teams don't compete, then you could argue that for a lot of teams. But at the moment, I just think Brendan Rodgers, he's a large part of why Leicester have failed to really do much this season. And this is a team who last year people were talking about they're going to challenge for the top 4, they're going to push, and we see it so much, like every recent season with Leicester, they just capitulate. And I quite like Leicester as a club. I think how they run is fantastic, but as a fan base, I think they're, very.
Well, they have clappers, don't
they? Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's nothing against clappers. Like, they're.
Well, I'm not a fan.
I think like whatever gets you through the match, to be honest. But
yeah,
they, for me, just kind of they symbolise how you should run a football club. But Brendan Rodgers always kind of symbolizes for me how you should not manage the end of a season, because he just capitulates at the final hurdle. And you look at some of the decisions he made in terms of that midfield, some of the transfers they've made recently. I think people were going on about Patson Daka, and I was a huge champion for him. I think he would have done fantastic in our squad last season. I think he probably scores 10 league goals for us.
Yeah.
With his pace alone on that counter. But for some reason, they weren't playing him. And when you lose a player like Vardy for so long, you have to find a plan B. Brendan Rodgers just doesn't have a plan B, in my opinion. And he got very lucky with Iheanacho, finding form like he did and having performances like he has in recent seasons, because a couple of, before the last 2 seasons, people were saying West Ham dodged a bullet by missing out on him. And I just think Leicester, although they're the team you want the setup of in terms of scouting, in terms of training ground, and the overall ethos of the club, they're not. I would not swap Brendan Rodgers for Moyes. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because, prior to last season, they bottled top 4 twice, but they were in the position to get top 4 on that final day, and they probably should have got top 4 both of those seasons. So I think Rodgers is a good manager. I think he's a very solid manager, especially with, their scouting has been clever. And I think last season, he wasn't great in terms of, like you said, in some of the decisions he was making. And it was kind of clear that Leicester were much better in a 2 up top with Iheanacho and Daka, especially when Vardy was injured, and he could, persisted with that 1 up top in his formation he likes, which you alluded to before. He doesn't really have that plan B, but I think injuries hit Leicester last season. Fofana was a big one. I know they brought in Vestergaard in the summer, which was a weird transfer. And I don't know how much of a fan you are in terms of expected stats, but they were 19th for expected goals against. So their defense was absolutely shambolic last season. And they still, credit to them, they still managed to get 8th. They weren't far off us in terms of the points, and they got to the semi-final of the Conference League. So I think it's quite harsh to say Rodgers is overrated or, not as good as people may think, because I think he's done a very good job at Leicester in helping them kind of rebuild and get European football regularly. And that's exactly what we've wanted at West Ham. And that's what Moyes has started to do as well. But yeah, I think this summer, again, it's a big one for them. Depends who leaves. Tielemans looks like he might be going to Arsenal, and they've got a few decent players that will probably be scouted by others.
I just saw that Arsenal have had I think it's €40 million bid accepted for
really?
A Porto centre mid. So I'm not quite sure what that does to Tielemans, but I think Tielemans is another one. I think he's a good footballer, but do I think he's Champions League level? I think he'll give you that performance in the group stages, but in the knockout rounds where it matters, I think he disappears. I don't think he's a top quality European player.
I think defensively he needs to be better. But if he was put, next to, you saw it not last season, but the season before when he was next to Ndidi, he had that player behind him, and it kind of allowed his more creative side to kind of come into effect. And if he went to Arsenal, hypothetically, he has Partey, who granted is always injured, but I think that'd be a really good signing. I like Tielemans. I think defensively he needs to improve, but that's not his area really. It's not his strength. And I think he's a player You know what? He's a player that would be great for us because we don't have that player who's, you know, looking to put that forward pass on. Rice plays it pretty safe a lot of the time, and Souček isn't someone that's going to get on the ball and, you know, play those progressive passes. So I think he would be a good signing for us.
People seem to think that that's Lanzini for us, and I would 100% take Tielemans over Lanzini. The problem is that I think they're similar players in a way, that they will both kind of either flatter to deceive might be harsh, but I think they will disappear in and out of games. And with a player like Ndidi, you can do that. And with Rice and Souček, he could do that. But I think if it's going to be a 2 and it's going to be Souček and Tielemans, then we're going to get found out. If it's going to be Rice, I think he's covered. But with Souček, he gets found out. And, you know, for £25 million or whatever, the 25 to 30, personally, I'd still be looking to go towards someone like Sangare because of what he offers and the sheer physicality. But I think the only way I would bring in Tielemans is if we're shifting someone like Lanzini, and we're making a statement that we're going to progress, we're going to upgrade players, and we've got, you know, he'd be a good kind of Vlasic replacement in terms of you want him playing centrally, but you don't want him playing out wide. But
yeah,
if he was to come in for him, and then that allowed Lanzini a bit more attacking freedom, fantastic. Tielemans can sit a bit deeper, but personally, I think there's better ways to spend that money, and I'll be interested to see what Leicester do in the transfer market this year, because Fofana for me was the outstanding young centre-back in Europe. And I think I even said this like kind of when we got linked with him, when Leicester were kind of, it seemed like that deal was slowing. But if minus the leg break, if you'd said to me, would you like Zuma or would you like Fofana, I would have 100% said Fofana.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in any way as a mark against Zuma. I just think Fofana's that good. If he's back next year, they push for that top 4 spot. And they could be very dangerous. But for me, Soyuncu is very overrated as well. He's a bit of a headless chicken at times. And on the ball technically, he is very culpable. So they have those players who can create magic, but at the same time, if they're going to have to get in a new number 1. I think Schmeichel is a great keeper. He's someone you would want around the squad, but he's not a top 4 pushing keeper anymore. And if they can get that in, if they can get an upgrade on Soyuncu, I think they're laughing. I think they'll be up. I think they'll be up in the kind of top 6 spot.
Yeah.
But it is just a case of if Rodgers can manage the squad and if he can prove me wrong. It's one of those things where with good football, I'm happy to be proven wrong. But I think with us, I think Leicester, if I had to pick one team that we're the most similar to, it's Leicester right now. And that's because you look at Leicester's team, we would go, right, bang, we'll have Harvey Barnes. Bang, we'll take Daka. Bang, we'll take Fofana. And they instantly improve our team and they're in positions we exactly need.
they're probably looking at us exactly the same. They're thinking, bang, we'll take Bowen. We need that position. Bang, we'll take Zuma to partner for Fana at the back. Bang, we'll take Rice. Like it's very similar. We both have very high quality players, but not enough to kind of maintain that push towards the top four. We don't have that depth enough. And I think Leicester's a great example of what we are similar to. And having them on that last game of the season could be pretty interesting in terms of where we'll both be at that point of the season and whether there's European football up for grabs. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting season with, it's going to be a one of a kind with that World Cup break. European Conference League, we've got that to enjoy. Hopefully we go far in that. And hopefully this summer we do bolster the squad that we need to do, because it's looking thin, and we definitely need that depth. We need 5, 6, 7 really important signings for us to be able to push for that top 7 again, and maintain our European run as well at the same time. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. We've got some interesting fixtures. Man City at home, it's going to be tough, but always a nice tester. Arsenal away Boxing Day, another key one, and then obviously Leicester away to finish the season. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm absolutely sweating, so I think we're going to call it a day. But yeah, these fixtures are always interesting to take a look at, and it's always the same thing. Don't read too much into it, because football isn't played on paper, and things happen throughout the season that will change this. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Man City at home, it's going to be good to be back at the stadium, hopefully with some new signings to take a look at. Hopefully Agard's one of them. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, Areola's in between the sticks, and hopefully we've got a few more signings as well. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for today, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're pushing for 100 subscribers by the end of the year, so we're already a third of the way through. We're going to try and get there. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Babbling Irons as well. Mike's not here today; he's enjoying the sun in Valencia, I think. So he's normally running Twitter and putting out some really good scout reports of players. So make sure to look out for that over the summer transfer window, because there's some really good stuff. And yeah, we're going to be back at the weekend with a different video. We're going to be doing hot takes. So, there's going to be a bit of controversy there, probably a few disagreements. But yeah, let us know in the comments how you feel about these fixtures, whether you think playing Man City first is a good thing or a bad thing, your thoughts on the mid-break of the World Cup, and yeah, the end of the season as well. So that's pretty much it from me. Sloth, any final words?
To be honest, that's it really. I think do take a look at Mike's analysis and list of targets. I think it's fantastic. He's really put together a great page of analysis, and for all of them. I think, yeah, it can't be understated that for the next few weeks, I think West Ham fans are going to have to really kind of bite their tongues. And just trust in possibly the most untrustworthy man in London, that we are in fact getting things done. So I think it's going to be an interesting few weeks. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, other than that, let's try and hit that 100 subscriber mark. I think as you said, we're already about a third of the way there, and keep your comments coming. We'll try our best to interact with them and get the conversation going. But other than that, it's just come on, you irons, really.
It is. There's nothing else to say. Come on, you irons.